What is up, everybody? Welcome back to a brand new episode of the Run Your Mouth podcast. We're cranking out a lot of content, mostly because porch tour's over and I am home and bored. And, if I'm not working, I'm not doing anything. So let's get the episodes in. And on that note, before we do a breakdown of the Donald Trump 4D chess cycle, I finally cracked the code. It took an entire year of all this chatter of what Donald Trump 4D chess looks like before I could finally figure out the formula, but I figured it out. But before I break that down, later in the episode, we got Kyle Anzalone coming on, going to give us the full update on everything foreign policy. And for anyone that wants to support the show, you go to robbernsteincomedy.com. We're going to do a watch-along of Jared Kushner's presentation and Dan Bongino's return to Fox News. It's not actually on Fox News, but he was on Hannity last night. So if you guys want to, go subscribe right now, robbernsteincomedy.com. It's all $5 a month, and it's going to help support the show, help support my editor, help get those intros out, and that's enough pitching. Let's get into it. So I finally figured out, listen, it's going to keep happening and happening, so you might as well just be aware of what's going on. And that way, as I've said it before, I pull really good information out of my ass. And if you're listening to the show, you can celebrate living in the future and being right. So here is the Donald Trump cycle. It starts with you say something crazy. We own Venezuela. The Iran war, they don't have nukes anymore. We took care of it. We're going to own Greenland. I'll solve the Ukraine war within a couple days. That's you lay a heavy anchor and you say something completely crazy. Then, when what you said does not come to fruition, you go to step 2, which is you either walk it back, I was never going to actually take Greenland by force, or you just declare mission accomplished. We run Venezuela now. So step 1, you say something batshit crazy, you lay down a heavy anchor so that you got room in negotiations, except in this case, sometimes you just piss people off, and then you walk it back or you just declare mission accomplished. That brings us to step number 3, which is when you did not accomplish the crazy thing that you said you accomplished, you go, well, we're negotiating and a deal is in the works. And then when that doesn't go your way, you go to step number 3, which is you ADD and pivot to something else, which is he's already back to meeting with Zelensky. He's already back to the Ukraine war. And then to complete the cycle, you either say something new and crazy, or you go back to one of the things that you moved on from previously. So, for example, you could go back to, all right, well, we're going to tariff everybody. All right, instead of tariffing everybody, we're going to get rid of all the immigrants. Not one illegal immigrant is going to remain in this country. I'm going to send ICE for the governors. Then you turn around and you go, I would never take all the governors. That's crazy. We can't raid governors' homes. But we do have a problem with illegal immigration and people not getting in the way of law enforcement. Guess what? We're meeting with everybody, and a deal is in the works. Oh, you know what? We're actually going to go back to Venezuela and take the new leader out as well. And then when that gets boring, you say something new and crazy. There you go. I figured it out for everybody. All this chatter of 4D chess, you can just understand we're just living in the same circle over and over. Will continue to repeat itself. And, now you can, at least you don't have to panic every single time one of these crazy shenanigans is going on. All right, let's get into our episode brought to you by YoKratom.com, home of the $60 kilo, only place in the entire world where you get a full kilo of Kratom for just $60. And to start the show, we've got this video, which the producer man put together. So I don't even know what's here. Sometimes this guy does the hard work and he finds all the topics for the show. And so let's roll a clip and then we'll comment.
It could be more than $19 billion. Can you believe that? That's just one state. If we were able to cut out 50% of the fraud, 50%, and we should be able to do better than that, we would have a balanced budget without having to talk about even growth. So we have a lot of options, but we're working very hard on that. That's a big deal. It's not just the protests, the fake protests done by agitators and, professional.
I've talked about this before on the show, but it's one of the most promising stories going on in the United States of America. That is there a legitimate possibility that if we just got rid of all of the fraud, we could actually reduce our budget by 20 or 30%. Think about how big of a problem government spending is and seemingly how easily we can fix it. It's almost remarkable how easily we can fix this problem. Reduce the military spending by 50%, rely more on the nuclear triad or whatever that word is, whatever that fancy word that starts with the T is. Just go with the nuclear deterrent and reduce our military spending, get rid of all the fraud, and you might have just reduced our government spending by 50%. And then guess what? I guess you don't need to declare war on everybody as you try and make sure that people continue to lend us money and that the dollar reserve, maybe that's why they're going for broke, is that they realize that they're grifting so much money through fraud and how easily this system can actually get cleaned up that we can keep this racket going for much longer than anyone anticipated. But now, isn't this an incredible admission of your failures? If you want to tell me that we can clean up the budget just by getting rid of fraud, why isn't that your priority? Why did you get rid of the whole Doge thing? Why did nothing come of Doge? Why was it that when Thomas Massie was saying, you guys are certifying and all of the fraud that Doge figured out that we had to get rid of, you guys are just reapproving the spending plan that includes all of those agencies that they said that we should no longer fund? Does this not seem remarkable that if you actually believe that we can clean up our entire budget through fraud, why don't you make that mission number one? Let's do Greenland later. You want us to have a long time running successful country? I feel like if you could reduce our government spending by 50% and do it via fraud, then we'll be fixed. All right. I had my comments in the wrong place. I will be taking comments. And I also, it's funny. I was on Rode, great company. They actually answer their phone calls. I spoke to a nice Australian man last night. We fixed the board, and now it's back to not working. But I'm curious to know how my mic volume is. And my producer man's actually deaf, which is why I have to refer to the chat. He's good at finding relevant videos for the show, though. But isn't that an incredible mission from Donald Trump? That he believes that we can clean up our budget just by getting rid of fraud, but he's not telling you any plan to get rid of fraud. And on that note, he seems to have walked away from the entire Doge initiative. Let's make that priority number one. I'd be in for that. All right. And so in terms of following the Donald Trump cycle, so we went from we're going to take Greenland by force to walk it back. I was never going to take it to force. And now we're in stage 3 of pretending like there's a negotiation for what we want. And so here is the latest in Donald Trump's negotiations. This is from Fox News. Based upon a very productive meeting that I had with Secretary General of NATO Mark Rutte, we have formed the framework of a future deal with respect to Greenland. And now, usually Donald Trump, sometimes he accomplishes nothing and he says that it's done. So when he's using words like framework for a deal and he's not declaring that there actually is a deal, it sounds like you don't have anything. Also, I think the issue was in part that NATO wasn't too happy about Donald Trump basically saying, fuck you, all of Europe. I'm done with this NATO thing. I don't care what you guys think. I'm taking Greenland. But I think there's also the aspect that Denmark currently owns Greenland. So I guess NATO's going, you know what? If we're just taking shit, we want our cut on this thing. Fuck, we're in on this. Screw Denmark over. All right, let's continue, though. So he has the framework for a deal. Remember, we're in step 3 before he ADDs and moves on. So it's step 3 when you pretend like there's negotiations that's going to get the thing done. Based upon this understanding, I will not be imposing the tariffs. There you go. Once again, step 2, you walk things back that were scheduled to go into effect on February 1st. Additional discussions are being held concerning the Golden Dome as it pertains to Greenland. Further information will be made available as discussions progress. And then here is a... I thought I had a video on this. All right. We got an article. Let's read this one line that I decided to highlight. Let's see what we got here. Trump called the framework really fantastic, but offered few details, which we know that's the way Donald Trump operates. He's got the ultimate, most practical solution. Best thing anyone's ever done. But he can never tell you any of the details, nor does it ever actually get done. But he said, we're giving everything we want at no cost. There you go. That's pretty great. We're getting everything we want at no cost, but yes, that's actually going to happen, and it's fair for everybody. We're going to get everything we want. We're going to spend absolutely zero money on it, and everyone's going to be happy with the outcome. I'll believe it when I see it. And now I might have discovered the best version of Donald Trump, because, sometimes he makes these crazy claims, and before he walks back the crazy claims, people want to know what the specific plan is of how he's going to implement it. It's still a couple weeks later, and I'm confused as to what extent we're running Venezuela. I'm still a little bit confused about that, but he ADD'd and moved on. So, how much time are we going to spend on the thing if he moved on from it? But here is Donald Trump. He's being asked about his Greenland plan. It's his opportunity to address the details, see if there's any specifics. Let's give it a play, and then we'll comment.
Mr. President, can you tell us details on your... Mr. President, can you give us some details on how you reached this framework, please? What is the detail of the framework?
The next step is the...
What are the details?
For everybody, it's a great security, great national and international security. It's a deal that people jumped at. Really fantastic for the USA. Gets everything we wanted, including especially real national security and international security.
How so?
I think they might have fixed the audio on this, but I love that the lady didn't have a shotgun mic on my first time listening to it, and you couldn't hear a word that Donald Trump said. And I was like, no microphone Donald Trump might be the best Donald Trump. He's not going to give you any of the details anyway. So if we could just set him up for interviews and just not have to hear the nothing that he says and just cut through it. And then here's one more on this topic. But we've got Trump, and he's back to addressing the situation in Iran. Let's give it a play.
Well, we have a concept of a deal.
Nope, this is back. More deal talk. Producer man shuffled things on me. He likes to keep me on my toes, but we'll play it in common. Let's go.
I think it's going to be a very good deal for the United States, also for them. And we're going to work together on something having to do with the Arctic as a whole, but also Greenland. And it has to do with the security, great security, strong security, and other things.
The market 600 points, getting back a lot of some of the nervousness we had in the last couple of days. The tariffs are off. Nothing happens on February 1st.
No, we took that off because it looks like we have pretty much a concept of a deal.
A deal of ownership, a deal...
Well, it's a little bit complex, but we'll explain it down the line. But the Secretary General of NATO and I...
We're on the move on stage, everybody. We're walking it back and moving on. Why are you asking me for the specifics? Don't worry. We're not even going to be talking about this in a week from now. And on that note, here's Donald Trump commenting in Iran because he does need to pivot back to some other crazy topic. So here is Donald Trump talking about the next steps in Iran.
Things stand with Iran. The U.S. has got sizable military assets.
You know, we have a lot of ships going that direction just in case. We have a big flotilla going in that direction, and we'll see what happens.
Donald Trump's basically, this is why I need no more boats, so that way I can threaten everybody all the time. I ran into a little bit of a quagmire of that I sent boats down to Venezuela. I'm trying to leave some over by Asia. And, without enough boats in the ocean, I can't threaten everyone all the time. But luckily, I'm moving some of the boats, and so we can ramp up our pressure and pretend like maybe we're taking action, maybe we're not. Kind of depends on Bibi. He wasn't ready for the fight a couple weeks ago, so we'll see what Bibi's in the mood for once I move all the boats over.
Force. We have a big force going toward Iran. I'd rather not see anything happen, but we're watching them very closely. I stopped 837 hangings on Thursday.
Has that been validated yet? I don't know.
Would have been dead. Every one of them would have been hung. This is like from 1,000 years.
All right, I've had enough of this. All right, let's take a couple comments. First, Runaway Slav. Does rubbing Robbie's head bring good luck? Does it work if he does it to himself? Hasn't brought me good fortune yet, and I will say when I first started shaving my head and people like to give you that little doggy pat, I never hit anyone, but I every single time was like, I want to hit this person in the face. I'm a bit of a germaphobe. I really don't want hands on my face ever. I really don't want some dirty stranger coming up and just rubbing my head like I'm a dog. So thus far, it hasn't brought me any good fortune. And so I will, try and convey to people. That's actually why I wear the hats, is that people don't just try and rub my head, hoping it will bring them good fortune. Robert Scher. Actually, it's how I control the weather. Robert Scher, 1853. Those sailors and airmen have to be utterly exhausted from continuing their patrol. Not sure if I follow on that. Not dissimilar to the Keto Bitui in World War II. They had constant carrier ops from December 14th to June 42nd. I hope we're not in a similar boat. You know more about war history than I do because I have no idea what you're talking about. All right. Now we look at some of the most recent images down in Minnesota as Donald Trump does his best to get rid of some of these illegal immigrants that came into the country. And obviously the situation in Minnesota is pretty crazy with the amount of fraud that's taken place with these immigrant populations, these Somalian pirates stealing all of our funds. Let's see if I can zoom that out a little more. I'm not sure. It might be all. Oh, there we go. That's a better view. All right. Well, let's give this one a play as well, and we'll reserve our comments for after the video. Here we go.
He has like an iPhone 8.
Stop, human! Stop murdering us! Stop terrorizing us! Please, go home! We don't want you here! Go home to your families! Get out! Leave Minneapolis!
Get the fuck
We don't want you here! Go home!
Thanks for the support.
So, firstly, is I just love the climate of, the sarcasm flying back and forth. You got to appreciate that the ICE officers have a sense of humor about how disliked they are by the local residents. And then you got to really love the local residents and the liberal fumes that they've been huffing over the last 7 or 8 years, that they're this absurd, that they're putting on performances of just how upset they are. They're looking to cry in ICE's face. And, good training by the ICE guys, not just getting out, wrangling them, giving them a hard time, just throwing some good old sarcasm back their way. But I did have a thought for this, the ringleader of the ICE people. I don't even think he's an ICE guy. I guess he's like a local cop, but he's working with them. I've been seeing him on a lot of videos and whatnot, and he got harassed going into a gas station. He's just trying to take a piss and get some snacks. Whatever job you're working, that should be base. You know what I mean? There should be, even in times of war, sometimes you don't bomb the military hospitals, the other place, or the prisoners of war. There is a concept in life of base where some people should be safe when they get to certain locations. And I feel like no matter what a man's politics are or how much you hate him, a person should be able to use the bathroom and buy gas station snacks in peace. No matter how reprehensible you think someone is, if they're taking a break from a long day's work and they're going to support their local gas station and pick up a Red Bull, take a leak, maybe have a Slim Jim, I feel like across the board, everyone can take a break from rounding up illegal immigrants or protesting the rounding up of illegal immigrants when you get to a gas station to take a piss and have a snack. I feel like that should be safe territory. People from both sides can get together, almost like during World War II when both sides took off Christmas so that they could play soccer together, and then they went back to killing each other the next day. I feel like, and maybe ICE needs to take part in that as well, that if an illegal immigrant walks in to the gas station while the ICE officer is there, it's like, all right, man, it's snack break. Across the board, everyone's entitled to their snack break. But they're following these guys around with whistles, making a big stink, even as he's just trying to eat himself a roadside snack. And I was just thinking it would be great if this guy got himself like one of those New Orleans style marching bands to just follow him around and blend the whistle noise into his entourage of a marching band. But here you go. The guy's just trying to get himself some snacks. And here's the people of Minnesota outraged, honking their horns and whatnots. And maybe the fans of the Run Your Mouth podcast will subscribe in such droves that we can afford to get this guy a marching band to drone out the whistles that he otherwise has to hear. It'll be fun watching this guy in interviews when he's like 90 years old and he's, I can't hear what? Hey, too many whistles.
Sorry, man. You all right? Yeah, I'm good. Oh, hey, Mark. Go home, you fucking bastard! What is that? This isn't Nazi Germany! Go home!
I'll also say the fact that the one guy is out there with his Christmas truce was World War One. Did I say World War II? I meant World War One. It does kind of listen. I don't think that government officials should be out there in masks. So I want to make that clear. They shouldn't be out there in masks. But the fact that the one guy with the balls not to wear the mask now needs an entire security detail everywhere he goes because everyone's gunning for him does kind of create a suggestion that the government can't afford to not have these other ICE people not be in masks. I know it becomes a little bit circular of who's causing the problem, who's in trouble, who's at fault for the escalations, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. And I don't think government officials should be in masks, but completely harassing the one guy with the balls not to wear it, that he needs a full security detail. I don't know that the government could afford full security details for every ICE member. And then what? If those ICE members, security detail people aren't in masks, then you need a security detail for them. All right, let's continue.
Bovino's in the bathroom. Oh, is he? Yeah, there. Oh, there he is. There he is. Oh, is there any reason we can't go in there?
You gotta love the face. Oh, you guys can't even see it. That's hilarious. I didn't have it up on the screen. All right, we can move on to the next topic. You guys missed the end of the video of him just standing in the gas station, limping and trying to figure out his exit strategy, like he's moving a war-torn area. Did I not play any of that video? Was there none of that video on screen or just the second part? All right. Anyways, guys, there was one. We're off of the porches for now. There will be a return to porching probably later in the year this year, more like starting in May, April, something like that. Not really even considering adding more porches at the moment. I am trying to add more gigs, though. We're actually going to be doing one up in New Hampshire. Oh, did you just say, guys just said nope, none? I just watched the entire video without anything on. Woo, that's some ADD for you. All right. Do you guys want to watch the video before we move on to the next topic? I can show you guys the highlights. I'll show you the highlights real quick. You know, I feel like I don't need you guys shouldn't miss out on such fun. So here, I'll give you the highlights real quick. All right. So here, first you got these guys are out here being whistled at. You got the fat lady's gonna start yelling at him.
Yeah, it's like an iPhone 8.
Gonna blast the bad gym music in the guy's face.
Stop terrorizing us! Please, go home! We don't want you here!
You gotta say that's a pretty strong performance from this lady. My village! You're raiding my village! Where's this lady from?
Go home to your families! Get out! Leave Minneapolis!
Get the fuck
We don't want you here! Go home!
Thanks for the support.
All right, so there was your dose of sarcasm, and then we could take a look at Officer Hardass out at the gas station being harassed by whistles. People are being notified that he's all there. They're gathering outside, getting their snowballs ready. And there you go. That's the end of that topic. All right, let's thank another sponsor. We did create an opportunity for people to sponsor Porch Tour shows, and we had a show out in Colorado, sponsored by the author Scott Johnson, who wrote the book Mayhem Divided. I'm very impressed by the audience. You guys have really sat down and written a lot of books. You get a lot of authors coming out to shows, handing me books. This is a fictional tale. It's a buddy adventure with twists through global fuckery. From Portland to Kiev, as seen through the eyes of booze and sex-addicted veteran Tim Ellingwood. It's written by Scott Johnson, a Marine, an Iraq War veteran who spent over a decade in private intelligence. So, listen, I think it's awesome that, firstly, I appreciate all the support from the fans of the show, and I think it's cool how many of you guys have creative projects. So, if you're out there, you're looking for a new book to read, I recommend Scott Johnson's book. Was that was the guy's name, right? All right. Anyways, let's take a couple of comments, and then let's move on. And then we got Kyle Anzalone coming on pretty soon. He's going to give us the real scoop on what's going on with a bunch of things. Nicole Sindler, we should watch ICE. They should behave, but I think they have largely tried to look into it today by margin of error. To me, seemed fine. I don't know what that meant. Runaway Slav, the master justified because the mostly Latinx ICE have families who will be targeted by protesters. Slav, there's nothing that could be done that you wouldn't say was justified. Snow Day and RYM, thank you, Jewish God. You know, sometimes he pulls through for us, not always. At Real Adolf Hitler. Oh, look, it's the real Hitler's here, everybody. You'll be really impressed with the audience when you see my hog. Is Real Hitler going to show up to the Run Your Mouthers and validate whether or not he had 2 testicles or whether or not he was circumcised and secretly Jewish? Nicholas Sindler, have you heard Group Blue Line or whatever? They're supposedly organized a bunch of vets, went on anti-ICE app and reported 100,000 false reports to throw them off. I did not, but you know, I'm enjoying the Looney Tunes climate of what's going on out there. All right, now let's cover one more topic until we got Kyle on, and I'm sure a bunch of you guys saw this. It was making the rounds on Twitter, but you had a little incident with Scott Jennings pissing off the other people at CNN. I'm not a huge fan of that guy, but, you know, his clips make the round because he's just kind of level-headed compared to the other just absolute buffoonery that takes place over at CNN. And, you know, he's there basically when you get your tall lady at the front of the volleyball team and things get lobbed up and then you just get to spike it down. So basically everyone sits around him in a circle and they say really stupid lefty talking points. And then he's there just to spike it back in their face. And so in this case, he's just pointing out that illegal immigrants are illegal immigrants. That's it. That's all he's doing. And I personally struggle with this in life, that sometimes people will, and it's particularly people on the left, but it's not only people on the left. Sometimes people will very calmly like play aggressive chess pieces. And they're so confident that they're in the right as they do something that is kind of socially unacceptable and is kind of against the norm. So before I even play the clips, I'm just going to set this up because it's just such a showcase of like typical liberal behavior in terms of how they always pretend like they're on the side of morality and that everyone else is evil and that they're so high and mighty above us. And that's why we shouldn't have freedom of speech. And it's amazing. All right. So what you have here is essentially Scott Jennings is just calling illegal immigrants. And then you've got some young-looking kid who's on CNN who's offended by this and essentially tells him, you're not allowed to use that word. Hey, you, don't use that word. And it's a little bit crazy to be a young kid telling firstly, on television climates, you don't really get to tell the other pundits what they can and can't say. That's not really the way it operates. And typically in job places, people who are junior, it's not really a great look when you're telling someone more senior how they're supposed to operate. Like, you really better be a smart hotshot. If you're ever like at a job and you want to oppose the more senior people at that job site because you've got a better way to do it, you better have some really good information to back up your claim because it's kind of bad etiquette. And so here you've got a kid, in my opinion, playing a very aggressive hand of telling another adult man what they can't say while the other guy's right. He's just calling them illegal immigrants, and he's telling them, you're not allowed to say that. And Scott Jennings responds with, so how are you going to enforce this? You want to tell me that I'm not allowed to use certain words? How are you enforcing that? And then you've got Cuomo who turns around and pretends like Jennings is being the aggressive one in that instance. That Jennings is being the bully and that he's the aggressive one. And it's like it's like the lefty maneuvers where you get these little beta bitches and they do something that's really aggressive. And so then you go, hey, you know, you're kind of being disrespectful and aggressive. And then they turn around, they're like, oh no, look at this white male aggression here. Oh, look at this big giant bully. It's like, dude, you started this. You were aggressive first. And so with that setup, we can watch the videos. Here's first Scott Jennings on CNN being bullied by this little whippersnapper, and then Cuomo trying to come to the rescue of the whippersnapper.
I recognize you haven't reviewed all the material
anymore.
And you have.
The
I don't.
The percentage.
Who are you to tell me what I can and can't? I've never met you, brother. I can say whatever I want. They're illegal aliens, and that's what the law calls them, illegal aliens. That's what I'm going to call them. Right.
Listen, you can't say illegals anymore because ICE is directly targeting legal citizens of this country. And How
are you going to enforce your edict on me, just out of curiosity?
Listen, I understand.
But just listen to his point about illegal.
No, I want to know why he gets to instruct
You're
my
changing the
speech.
topic.
Hang on.
I want to know.
You're making a point
making
about
an
the people being arrested. Go
I
ahead.
understand that your job is predicated on just getting increasingly more demented every single week, and that the audience comes back to see if perhaps
Make your point.
My point is that you're saying the word illegals, but
it's in
you
federal
don't
law.
even really know what's happening. Or actually, I think you do, and
Sure
you're
I do.
doing this on purpose. But
Yes,
the truth
because
is,
I want the law enforced.
they are not just targeting illegal immigrants. They
are.
are targeting natural-born U.S. citizens.
They are not.
That is a fact. You
They are
cannot
not.
deny that. I mean, you can on national television.
They are
deny
not.
facts all the time.
They are.
I think we can all agree that this kid is passively being very aggressive. All right, let's continue.
a couple times in this very episode.
I still want to know how you're going to enforce your language
God's
edicts on
sake.
me.
We'll take that up.
How are we going to enforce it?
We're going to take that up in the break. Coming.
All right, and so here's Cuomo coming to the whippersnapper's back and letting him know, hey, Mr. Jennings, you're not that tough. Here we go. Let's roll the clip.
You see this clip of Scott Jennings saying, how are you going to enforce it? How are you going to enforce me not saying the word illegals anymore? How are you going to do that?
Say illegals anymore because ICE is directly targeting legal citizens of this country. And
How are you going to enforce your edict on me, just out of curiosity?
Listen, I understand.
But just listen to his point about illegal.
What are you, bully now? What are you, tough guy? Because you're talking to this kid who happens to be right, calling people illegals. They're called illegal aliens in the law. And you know what? A long time ago, Republicans and Democrats switched to undocumented. Why? Because it seemed inhuman. That's why. They changed the vernacular, and you know it. But that's not the point.
And we all hate when you guys change language so that we could pretend like something it's not. No one agrees or likes that. But hey, listen, if you don't play along with our renaming of verbiage to make things that we want to have more of in society seem more inappropriate, people in the chat, where's some other, that goes all the way down to the way that they pitch the Federal Reserve, bank elasticity. No, it's not that we're just going to hand out, create a banking cartel of, people, banks that don't have to compete with each other as they engage in fractional reserve banking and have a mechanism to always be bailed out if they overextend their lines of credit. It's called bank elasticity. How dare you refer that to as a banking cartel when we've already labeled it as bank elasticity? I know, because you created verbiage to soften the thing that you were trying to sell, which was not beneficial to me. People in the chat, I should have came up with some more examples beforehand, but that's the whole game, is that you guys come up with these nice terms. Every single bill that gets presented to Congress, the Save Your Grandma from Dying Act. Oh, I didn't realize, but that actually pays for the mortgages for wealthy bankers. Are you against the killing of grandmas? We all, this evil person against killing grandmas. That's the entire game, is that you guys try and rename things so that you can more easily sell it. And yeah, we don't agree to your terms, bud. Anyways, we can continue watching Cuomo crash out.
The point is, how are you going to do it? What are you going to do? What are you? You're a tough guy now, huh? I thought you were just supposed to be the simpering, but, open to conversation Trump defender. Of course, I remember you when you said he was like the worst thing in the world, but everything's convenience these days, right? It's getting you paid. But be careful. If you want to be a tough guy, there are plenty of tough guys out there. You want to see how somebody can make you stop saying illegal, and then what are you going to do, sue? Tough guy. How are you going to enforce that?
Is Cuomo threatening him with violence? I mean, this is pretty fun. That's a good way to operate as a news anchor. Hey, me and my family, we're real tough. I'll come over with my goons, but don't use any derogatory words for me and my family.
So if somebody beats your ass because you're being rude and disrespectful and causing division in this country, that's causing distress and pain.
There you go. Chris Cuomo stands for violence towards people who he views as creating division in this country by using words.
all over the streets and making people want to hurt one another.
All right, I've had enough of that. Let's bring on Kyle. I see him hanging out. What's going on, Mr. Kyle? How are you today? Thank you for joining us.
Doing well, Robbie. Happy to be back on, and appreciate it. You were on my show not that long ago, so it's good to be back on Run Your Mouth.
There you go. And I had a good time. Are you do you got any time restraints? Because if you do, I'll hop right into the foreign policy topics. But if not, you can respond to some clips with me before we get into all this stuff. Yeah.
No time restraints. Let's roll.
All right, let's do it. I have no idea what's next because I failed to label anything this episode. So we'll roll it and then we'll respond.
Why? What is?
Oh, okay. This one's pretty good. Listen, I don't know about you. I don't pay that much attention to what's going on over on Candace's show. Where do you fall on some of these conspiracies? Do you think Israel killed Charlie Kirk, and do you think Macron's wife is a dude? Where do you fall on the Candace Owens conspiracies?
So I actually do watch Candace's show. I feel like I'm in this space and she's the, number one figure in this space. So I should know what she's been saying. I don't think she's really had produced any substantial evidence that Israel had anything to do with Charlie Kirk's death. Any foreign actor had anything to do with Charlie Kirk's death. I think she's made some fair points, poking holes in the narratives that the feds put out. Some claims that Turning Point USA has put out, and particularly the portrayal of Charlie Kirk as like the most undying Zionist that there was, which she really kind of proved wasn't true. So she's backed up some of her claims, but the more provocative ones about the French First Lady or Charlie Kirk, I at least she hasn't produced the evidence yet.
I don't even know how far she's gone into claiming that it was specifically Israel, as much as that there was clearly buffoonery. But what I loved about this clip is because I don't follow everything she does, not by a long shot. But I do think even in this show, I work in the style, and a lot of us do, where sometimes there's criticism of, well, those people, you guys can't just ask questions because it does insert a narrative. And there's some truth to that claim, because I've watched political pundits do it forever, where they'll bring someone on their show and then we'll ask them a question that's completely insane or ridiculous, such as, Kyle, are you gonna get into these allegations that you've actually been taking Saudi Arabian money in order to, or in your case, Russian money, in order to try and leverage American support for Putin? And so I can then go, hey, I was just asking a question, but no, it's very clear that I was sneakily trying to insert a narrative that I know is not true. So there is an extent by which, like, asking questions can be destructive because it's like a sneaky way of creating a narrative. But I think Candace I don't know if you saw this clip. She was on Piers. Firstly, I think she demolishes Piers and people who flip-flop once stories kind of become popular or mainstream. And I hated that during COVID. Like, that's why that was the first time I became aware of Barry Weiss, was the people who flipped on COVID once it was safe to flip on COVID. And then they pretended like they were the smart people who were just looking at the evidence and opposing the entire machine. It's like, no, you're 9 months to a year too late for that. That's when I was mad at Jon Stewart when he went on what's his name's show, whatever, the Colbert show, and he started great jokes about the COVID lab leak theory, but it was a year too late. And it kind of just reinforces that mainstream media is giving you real information, because you can be tuned in and go, oh, look, yeah, I do get the canon narrative. Yeah, a year too late. Once it's already safe to present this information. But anyways, we'll play the whole clip and then I'll comment. But I just thought she did such a good job defending her right to ask these questions and why that's actually not a reckless journalist habit. So, we'll play the whole clip. It's a full 2 minutes, and then we'll comment. And I have to actually press a button, or neither of us will see it. Here we go.
Is your theory?
I don't know. I don't know.
Well,
I don't
what's
know.
your theory
I don't
then?
know.
You must have an
my
idea.
theory is that we should investigate everything strange that happened on that day so we can figure out what happened.
But are you
It's literally
suggesting
just
that
called an investigation.
are you suggesting
why is everybody
Egypt?
why are we pretending that we don't know why we ask questions? Like, why? Like, you're a journalist.
But you
know
have a
what this
theory.
is. You're like, what's going on? What's
What's
going
your
on? Why do you
theory?
want to know why these planes were tracking Charlie? Well, my theory is that we are being sold absolute Fed slop. The media is doing their Operation Mockingbird Part 2 scenario by telling us, well, unless you absolutely have a conclusion, you can't even ask the question. Yes, we very well
But it
damn
may
can.
be,
Keep
Candace.
asking consistent questions until we get a clarified explanation for what happened on that day. And right now, we have nothing, okay? And that is the reason why people are watching my show, because I'm the only one not treating them like they're absolute idiots who don't have two eyes and who believe in magic bully theories and who understand that Egyptian planes should not have been tracking Charlie even 3 times this year would be an anomaly,
But Candace,
okay? They've been tracking him. We don't know where it's going to end, but we are going to keep asking questions until we get clear answers.
Candace, it may be that the person in the media spewing bullshit to the public is you.
No, nice try. It's not. It's
Could
you
be.
by saying, why are you asking
Could be.
questions? Don't you worry about Mikey's feelings? Everyone knows what this is. And like I said, because we have the example, the concrete example of after JFK's assassination, the media members quite literally being put on the payroll of the CIA, we have a historical example that we can look at and go, we're not doing that again. Doesn't matter how many times you keep telling the public that I'm spewing bullshit. It is only because there has not been anything that has come out of this investigation that makes any sense that the public is not listening to. I am sorry to say this, Piers, people like you. And what I love about you and I sitting down is that this exact same time last year, you were doing the same weird questioning and making all these things when I said that they were committing a Holocaust against the Gazans, and then you changed your mind.
Actually,
So you know what, Piers?
this time,
I'll see you next year when you change your mind again, and we have more information about what happened, and you realize that the difference between me and you is that I have the courage to take the risks and ask the questions first, okay, before it's popular. You wait until it becomes popular, and then you change your mind.
All right. I love it. I think it totally validated the perspective of, listen, if I'm pointing out the fact that government's lying to us and I can't tell you exactly who did it, why they did it, but I'm just showcasing, hey, this is a flawed narrative, that is valid. And I think she totally supported her right to ask questions, even if she doesn't have the conclusion.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a very fair point that Candace makes. I will say, and this is from watching her show, at times, you know, she is doing a little bit more than asking questions in the way that she's framing it. And by the reaction of her audience, you could clearly see that, you know, they are, you know, because of what she's saying, they are concluding that Israel was behind the Charlie Kirk assassination and things like that. So there may be some fair criticisms of Candace on how she's covered this, but the way Piers addresses it, the way he attacks her, she rightfully absolutely annihilates him. And that's why I think people like Candace and Nick Fuentes have been able to get so popular, is because the main people attacking them are absolute buffoons like Piers Morgan, and so they get to look really, really good when they go up against the guy, or, you know, anybody from the establishment.
Yeah, I just agree with her wholeheartedly. Of, we know that they lied to us about JFK, and so the idea of let's just trust government official narratives, and we're here in real time, and I can expose all the things that aren't truthful about this. So yeah, I'm going to make us think about this and try and pressure them to actually give us real information and a real story. And if people aren't out there doing that, I mean, even if she's 100% wrong on this story, the idea of waking people up to not just accepting official narratives, and we're going to pretend that in this climate that that's bad. This is COVID talk. Hey, trust the authorities. All right, moving on to another story. We had Jack Smith. He was in front of Congress yesterday handling questions. I don't think Donald Trump administration is particularly good at even going after their political enemies. We've already seen them fail on court cases against Letitia James and Comey. I didn't think from what I saw of the hearing that there were any... the only bombshell moment was basically the questioning about the hearsay from the witness who was claiming that Donald Trump had super stretch Armstrong hands and managed to reach up to the front of like the limo and turn it around or whatever, and that he never actually spoke to that witness. Before I read this one time from the Wall Street Journal, I don't really have much to say about it other than I don't have a lot of faith in the Republicans of being able to bust people or even have get the files out. But listen, the Republicans might not even win by getting Hillary and Bill Clinton in front of Congress and grilling them over Epstein because they just don't seem to win these skirmishes. Did you watch anything? Did you have any other takeaways other than what I said?
No, I pretty much agree with you. And I think this was the biggest sign that Trump is a real failure, right? Is he can't even put in prison the people who wrongfully tried to put him in prison, right? He hasn't put in prison Comey and Brennan and all these people who tried to steal his presidency. As you were saying before, Trump would get asked, I remember 2015, 2016, the media, every time Trump would sit down, they would say, are you controlled by Vladimir Putin? Are you paid by Russia? Are you working in coordination with Russia? And Trump would say, no, no, no. Or then he started attacking the interviewer. And the reason he did that is because the interviewers would fight back and say, well, everybody is asking you this question. And so therefore, there must be something to it. And he hasn't gone after the people who are behind that, like John Brennan. It's really disappointing.
Yeah. All right. And so this one line was what I picked up on. I just kind of thought it was funny. I'll read it for everybody. This is from the Wall Street Journal. Former special counsel Jack Smith told lawmakers Thursday he thought that the Trump-era Justice Department officials would do everything in their power to prosecute him because they have been ordered by the president. And isn't that kind of an admission of what you were doing? Like, in other words, yeah, I expect that the way that this thing works is if someone's ordered by the president to prosecute someone, they're going to go ahead, collect that paycheck, be a lawyer, and go ahead and prosecute the guy. In other words, an admission of that you didn't actually think that it was a fair trial. You took your marching orders and a paycheck, and that's what you did. It's almost like this is actually what his defense is I'm a lawyer. Someone hired me to do a job, and even if I couldn't do it or had to walk some funky lines to push the ball forward, I did my job as a lawyer.
Yeah. I think he's like making a play to get like a lot of sympathy from the liberals here. Oh, Trump's going to come after me. And they're just going to react to it and say, oh, that's right. This is the guy that tried to save America after Donald Trump's coup attempt. And now he's going to go to jail.
Sorry, did you just hear that on your phones? I was just
yeah.
Okay.
No, that's all right. So it's just he's trying to make himself a martyr to the left. I think that's what he's doing here. Oh, poor me, Donald Trump's going to come after me. Well, of course he is. You tried to put him in jail for no good reason.
All right. And then last clip that I lined up, and then we'll get into some of the foreign affairs stuff that's going on. But for anyone who's interested, I'm going to do a whole watch along of this entire interview after me and Kyle get into the foreign affairs stuff, and you can subscribe at robbernsteincomedy.com. But here's a teaser and a little bit of the Dan Bongino crash out continuing. He appeared on Sean Hannity the other night, eyes bulging from his face just looking like he's sitting in a sauna melting. And here he is trying to advocate for the good work that he did over at the FBI. The entire interview is pretty incredible with the way that he's trying to frame everything. But let's roll this one clip and comment.
Do you dipwads even read your own headlines? Are you that stupid? These are these media morons. People who've never spent a day wearing a badge, never kicked in a door, never arrested some child predator or some bank robber or some gang member. These morons don't know anything about the safety status of the country.
So what just stands out to me in this little clip is that it's just more censorship talk and really criticizing his career before he was in the FBI, because now he is a trust the experts kind of person. And unless you've actually worked in these government positions, and unless you have the knowledge and insight of being willing to speak to the government narrative because you're on their team, then you're not allowed to comment or have an opinion on this. Trust the experts, Kyle.
I mean, that is his message, and it's absolutely crazy that he's, coming back from the FBI and now he's just going to be an official spokesman. By the way, good on you and Dave for attacking this guy, even though
He deserves it.
we're living in this authoritarian government and this guy just left the FBI, so who knows? They're probably gonna try harass Dave or something. I really do think about those kind of things. But Robbie, I also think you need to give this guy some tips on being bald because he looks awful. And you look like a very cool bald guy, and this
You just
guy
got to own
looks
it. That's all you
gross.
can do. Is you got to own it, and on the days that you're too lazy to shave your head, just wear a hat. It's
Why
really
is his so shiny though? It's like glistening in that clip.
because listen, I'm a real man. I don't wear makeup. And these people, they walk in to do television and someone's pampering them and putting makeup on and I guess convincing themselves that whatever creamer they're putting on their head is helping.
Oh, well, it's a disaster. So yeah, definitely some bald tits for Dan Bongino.
All right, so let's get into it because there is quite a bit going on in the world. And as I have displayed on the Donald Trump cycle of the way he operates, is that part 3 is that you ADD and you move on to something else. So I'm not really quite up to date on everything that's happening, but let's start with the Gaza Peace Board. And without anything more other than that they're moving forward with the Gaza Peace Board. I guess Tony Blair has gotten his position there. Other countries are spending $1 billion that they can have a place on the board. Jared Kushner gave a presentation about all the investment that's going into New Gaza. Why don't you tell us what's actually going on there?
So I guess for anybody who wants the very short version, I don't think we have to pay a whole lot of attention to this. It's not going to be a lasting thing. The Board of Peace only matters if the war in Gaza ends. And over the past week, Israel's been killing about 10 Palestinians a day. They killed like 3 journalists on Tuesday and 2 children. So they're bombing quite a bit more than they were maybe a month ago in Gaza. And the reports out of Israel are that Netanyahu is going to go back to war in Gaza with an invasion of Gaza City in March. So I really think that
I think here's what's probably going on is Netanyahu has a relative who got the rubble removal contract from the Board of Peace, and so now he needs to make sure that there's enough rubble there that it's really worthwhile. This is his last chance to create more rubble for them to then get paid to clear out.
Yeah. And so, Jared Kushner and all these people are talking about rebuilding Gaza as this like tourist hub and tech hub. There might be a U.S. military base there. This is never going to happen for a few reasons. One, the money just isn't there. I mean, the cleanup from, removing not only all the debris, but also, there's a lot of bombs in that debris because a lot of countries got nervous about selling the Israeli bombs. They started using bombs that they were getting from Eastern Europe that were Vietnam War era or Korean War era or older. So like a lot of old Soviet weapons or old American weapons. And the dud rates on those bombs were like 20 to 25%. And so there's a lot of dud bombs in there, and that's going to take a long time to clean up because if there's duds, you can't just have the bulldozers running over it, or you're going to lose a lot of bulldozer operators and things like that, and equipment and all that other stuff. So it's going to be extremely expensive, but all the bombs they have dropped has created a lot of hazardous material. So not only do you have to remove the debris, but you also had to strip off a lot of the upper level dirt and then I'm guessing replace it. So, just getting this thing ready to be habitable for anyone again is going to be a massive, massive cost, much less, rebuilding the city on top of it. And then, of course, the major question of what do you do with the Palestinians when you have to, completely evacuate them from the strip? And again, this is all, I think, a giant fiction because it relies on Israel actually wanting to do it. Right? If Israel wants to go back to war, expel the Palestinians and just rebuild settlements in Gaza, they don't want a massive tourist hub. They just want this to be another portion of Israel. And so it doesn't matter because Netanyahu's going back to war. And also they're saying that Hamas has to give up their weapons within 3 weeks. And Hamas has been very clear that they're not laying down their arms until there's a pathway to an independent Palestinian state. And Netanyahu is saying week after week after week, he's never going to allow an independent Palestinian state.
All right, so I guess we're in the say something crazy. And so in this case, the massive investment coming in to make the area better for the people of Gaza is in the say something crazy stage. All right, so I got another question for you on this, and you know, I don't cover this topic as much as Dave does on his show, but I guess I've seen scattered headlines of that the region is in such disrepair that essentially, if you want to call what's happening there a genocide, it's like Israel did a good enough job of making the area uninhabitable so that people are still kind of dying off. Is that the case over there? Is it like still not enough aid and people are kind of living in tents and like this basically you couldn't bomb the place anymore, but people are just left there are going to kind of die off because it's uninhabitable, or what's the kind of like the current situation there?
Yeah, I mean, that is the situation. Like I said, not only, we'll get into all the other bombing, but they've really turned a lot of the area toxic with the large number of bombs they've dropped. One of the things that Israel figured out during their bombing campaign is if you drop enough of the massive 2,000-pound bunker busting bombs in a single area, it creates this like toxic gas byproduct that's heavier than air, so it sinks down. And so that they're trying to do that to like kill members of Hamas who are in tunnels. And actually, there is a mother of one of the hostages that was taken into Gaza who claims that Israel actually did that and her son ended up dying. So it killed at least one Israeli. They claim to have proof from the autopsy of that. So anyways, the place is toxic. So in that sense, they made that area uninhabitable for the Palestinians, and now they have to leave their homeland. So, under the definition of international law, that certainly fits the crime of genocide, as well as many other things, like the fact that Israel has damaged or destroyed every single hospital in Gaza. Now, there are some hospitals who, if you look at a hospital in your neighborhood, right, it's not one single building. And so if an airstrike hits it, there's other areas of the hospital that could still operate. They set up field hospitals and tents outside. So there are like some medical facilities in Gaza now, but patients talk about that at the hospitals, they don't have enough gauze. And so if your family member is injured in an attack or something like that, you actually have to go out on the street and try to find somewhere somebody selling some gauze or other material that could be used. Everybody's living in tents. Israel was supposed to allow, I think, like 60,000 mobile homes in to Gaza back in October. They haven't done that. And over the past 2 months, I think about 24 children have died due to exposure, right? Either from hypothermia or their tent flooded in the middle of the night and the child was swept away and drowned in the floodwaters. I mean, it's an absolute 100% horror show in Gaza. They made it completely uninhabitable for the Palestinians. I know, when we use the word genocide just as an average person, we think more of the act of rounding up and just gunning people down. And that hasn't specifically happened in Gaza, and certainly not similar to how it happened during the Holocaust, right? So, if you want to use the term ethnic cleansing, that they're just making the land uninhabitable for the Palestinians, so they have to leave. If you're more comfortable with that, then that's fine too, I think.
All right, so let's move on to, it's still Middle East stuff, but let's get the breakdown of what's going on in Syria. I was, I had a joke that never quite made it. Well, I guess I'm still playing around with it, but the short of it was that we got this new guy up there who used to run Al-Qaeda, and he's out there making statements like diversity is our strength. And my joke was just basically, I can't handle trans terrorists. Like, if you're going to be a terrorist, you got to be a terrorist. But I guess I had, and I'll give the broad strokes. I'll let you fill in the details. I figured that he was kind of like an Mossad / CIA asset. And that's in part because when Syria finally fell, I believe that there was some gear that we had sent over to Ukraine that found its way into Syria that was used in terms of toppling Assad. And then the fact that this new guy was embraced by America and Israel, and that seemingly Israel was able to just then go into Syria and kind of seize some military gear and pull off some operations without any pushback. it kind of seemed to me like this guy was an American asset. Now, I was sitting down for lunch, and listen, I don't get every piece of information right, and sometimes people are just talking over lunch, so I might not have this right. It might not be public information. It might not have even been said what the guy was saying, but I understood Colonel McGregor as saying that he was actually a Turkish asset, which I was like, I haven't really heard that, nor does that seem to fit kind of the chess pieces.
No, that's what it is.
Okay, so
that, I was going to correct you and say that it's that thing.
Great. I love, you see, everyone take this moment right here, because I mean it when I say it. I love being wrong. I love it. You know, it's nice. I'm not married to a narrative. I like truth. I like actual information. So if you give us the breakdown of how he's a Turkish asset and what the current situation is, I guess, with him expelling Kurds or even freeing ISIS prisoners. So give us the breakdown here.
Yeah, so I guess the way to start this off is just to say that the US's interest in Syria all along, this is going back, a couple decades now, was to remove Bashar al-Assad from power because they thought it would weaken Iran because Iran was allied with Assad, and also that gave them the ability to have a state to help facilitate arms transfers to Hezbollah in Lebanon next door to Syria, right? So that was the US's main interest. Israel's main interest was just to destroy the Syrian state. They don't want anybody in Damascus who has the capability of standing up to Israel in what they're doing to the Palestinians or trying to reclaim the Golan Heights that was seized from Syria by Israel in, I believe, 1967. And then Turkey's interest in Syria was not only to remove Assad, but also to install an Islamist government in Syria, I think for their own ideological reasons. Now, I don't think Israel ever really backed the al-Qaeda forces in Syria. I think they provided some assistance to the Islamic State forces after the Islamic State split with al-Qaeda in Syria, and the leader of Syria now is the head of al-Qaeda in Syria. So that's Abu Muhammad al-Jawlani, or as he now says, Ahmed al-Shara. And al-Shara was located in the north of Syria along the Turkish border. And so, for logistical reasons, it just made sense that Turkey was giving them far more support. Now, they also did receive support from the CIA through the Timber Sycamore program. This is Obama's ogre, John Brennan. He was CIA director, I think, starting in like 2012 during Obama's second term. Or 2013, maybe that is. And he funneled all these weapons and arms to the Syrian opposition, including al-Nusra's forces, right? And that's what is al-Qaeda in Syria. And so the U.S. did back Jawlani, but it really was Turkey who protected that guy. And he really is, I believe, a Turkish agent now in Damascus. Now, when they seized power last year, they did it with the help of Turkey, the United States, and also Ukraine. They provided like 150 drones and drone operators for this operation. Ukraine saw it as an advantage to weakening Russia by forcing them out of Syria. I don't know if that really helped Ukraine because Russia then relocated those military assets back in Russia, so it's actually less of a burden on the Russian military without this foreign base. But anyways, when those forces led by Jawlani, al-Qaeda in Syria, overran Assad, Israel did like that because it gave them the opportunity without a government in Damascus that was backed by Russia with meaningful air defenses. Israel was then able to go in and they dropped like thousands and thousands of bombs and destroyed 800 military sites in Syria. They also advanced and not only took the rest of the Golan area of Syria, but also they're like up to the suburbs of Damascus now and how far they've expanded their occupation of southern Syria. So Israel was definitely able to exploit Jawlani's rise to power. And, for that reason, they were happy that Assad was gone. But immediately after Jawlani took power, the Syrian government started saying like, hey, we have to be concerned now that there's a jihadist in charge of Syria. So I think that's maybe a breakdown. Any questions you have to clean anything up?
And so what's actually going on now? Because I only know about the Kurds because Dave was just joking about it like nonstop with the fake concern for the Kurds. But now I guess the Kurds are legitimately in trouble as Al Jawani, I guess, is kind of taking them out. So I guess the Kurds exist there, and they've been more of a strategic asset to both to the United States, and Turkey doesn't like them, and so I don't know. Fill in the blanks for me here. What's going on?
Right. So at the same time that the U.S. was funneling, the CIA was funneling weapons and money to the jihadists in Syria, the Pentagon, because, that's very unsavory. The American people don't like that. This is only a decade after 2 decades, or no, a decade after 9/11. It was 2011, 2012, 2013. They don't like giving weapons to Al-Qaeda, money to Al-Qaeda. But they presented the Kurds in Syria as this democracy that allowed their women to fight. Now, we've since have heard from Syrians that the Kurds are going around and conscripting their 15-year-old daughters into their military forces. So I'm not quite sure we should be celebrating the fact that they have women in their military when they're basically child soldier conscripts, right? This is absolutely horrendous. But we present the Kurds as these enlightened people in the Middle East. They're apparently not. I've talked to special operations forces who are actually in Syria working with the Kurds at the time, and they said that they treated the Yazidis like dogs, that they absolutely were 100% racist against the Yazidi minority in northwestern Syria, that they conscripted their girls, and even said that there were some instances of female genital mutilation that they were aware of. So these were not enlightened, better people than anyone else in the Middle East. They're just another group from the Middle East with their own problematic traditions. But we embrace them in Washington, and we bat them, and we basically use the Kurds to control the most the best territory of Syria as far as economics go. Not a lot of people live out in what would that be? Eastern Syria, the area east of the Euphrates River. It's about I think half Kurd and half Arab. But the U.S. backed the Kurds and they ruled over the Arab lands. But this is where Syria's oil and wheat field is. And by holding on to this territory, and every time Assad's forces try to take that back from the Kurds, the Americans would bomb them. And this really hurt the Syrian government economically. And that's, I think, ultimately why Bashar al-Assad ended up falling, is because the U.S. sanctions, as well as the U.S. occupying the best parts of Syria, caused that government to fall. Well, now the U.S. has kind of a problem, because once Assad falls and Jolani's in power in Damascus, we embrace Jolani, but we're also still backing the Kurds, which are in opposition to not only Assad, but Jolani's government as well. And so Jolani decides that Syria needs to retake its territory, and that means one U.S. ally in Syria is going to war against another U.S. ally in Syria, and it appears that the U.S. government is going to back al-Qaeda over the Kurds.
Wow. So we're selling out the Kurds. And what's the storyline of ISIS prisons, I guess, within the Kurdish territory? And I guess either that prisoners have been released, or there's a risk of them being released. And I is that just released into the wild or absorbed into this new Syrian regime? Or is that just buffoonery on Twitter?
Yeah, so the Kurds have been holding tens of thousands. There was one particular prison camp with 15,000 people in it called the Al-Hol prison camp. And this is where they held most of the people that they were pretty sure were ISIS fighters, as well as their families. And so this isn't just like a prison as you would think of a prison. This is like a massive camp which was once populated a lot with women and children. Now I'm guessing it's like women and young adults, because we're talking about a decade of time here. So if you went into that camp at 8 years old, you're now 18. However, there wasn't a lot of administration within the camp, and education and stuff was done by the women in the camp, many of who were the wives of ISIS fighters. And so this is just a complete shit show. I have no idea of what the solution for this could possibly be. But it's an absolute nightmare because you have a lot of people who've been in this prison for a long time. A lot of them weren't necessarily ISIS fighters, although they might have had Islamic jihadist ideology, although now, they were either minors or women. So I'm not sure what you do with them, but there's a lot of them over there. I think the Kurds are trying to play the prisons as basically, well, if you abandon us, then we're just going to leave this prison and all these people will be out in the wild. And so that'll be a real problem for you. No other country is willing to take them. Turkey won't take them. I think Iraq is willing to take them, but the Iraqis are just basically hanging people, the ISIS prisoners that they got back in the past. So I think the U.S. was kind of discouraging sending them to the Iraqi government for that reason, because it'll, I guess, just be years of hanging a couple dozen of them every week or so. I don't know what should be done here. It's an absolute catastrophe, and one that was really created under Barack Obama. We never should have backed the Syrian opposition in the first place. And because we did, now we have tens of thousands of people who are probably jihadists, but you really can't prove it. And you're either going to have to let them go or kill them.
All right, so let's move on to two more topics, maybe for just quick scoop predictions. And let's start with Iran. What's next steps? Do you think Donald Trump's actually ramping up for war?
Yeah.
Okay. So give us the take.
So last Wednesday, about a week and a half ago now, everybody thought the U.S. was going to attack Iran, even U.S. military officials in the Middle East. And people in the White House are saying that this wasn't Trump just saying something crazy. He was actually prepared to do it. And before he launched the attack, the Israelis called him and said, "We're not prepared to repel the Iranian counterattack." What they meant, Robbie, wasn't that we're not prepared. They're saying you're not prepared to defend us from an Iranian counterattack. Because during the 12-day war that happened in June, the U.S. had moved multiple Patriot interceptors, a THAAD interceptor, which those are our most advanced missile interceptors. If Iran is firing off their most advanced missiles, it's probably going to be the THAADs and the Patriots that are intercepting them, because the Israelis don't have a whole lot of stockpile. They might now of their Iron Dome interceptors, but particularly their Arrow 2 and Arrow 3, they don't produce very many of them every year. It's much cheaper and faster to produce the offensive missiles than the interceptors, right? Because the interceptors are trying to shoot a bullet with a bullet, and a missile is just trying to hit somewhere in the vicinity of a country, right? It's a hell of a lot easier to do. So Israel needs those interceptors. And then also the U.S. military is built around naval power, really. Because, if we're launching our planes from bases and runways in Qatar and Saudi Arabia and Jordan, those are going to be vulnerable to Iranian missiles. And even if we have advanced interceptors in the region, you could only hit so many targets. And through the Ukrainian war, we've seen the development, mainly by Russia, of being able to do drone swarms with decoy drones, right? So then you could launch thousands and thousands of drones at a very low price. And you don't know which drones are actually armed and which ones are the decoys. And so you have to take out all the drones, but the interceptors are already more expensive, and then they get overwhelmed. And so the U.S. actual stand-in bases in the Middle East are very vulnerable. So now Trump is moving an aircraft carrier strike group into the Middle East. He had taken the last one out, I believe, in November and sent it over to the Caribbean to capture Maduro earlier this month. And so now we have an aircraft carrier strike group on the way.
How is an aircraft carrier not a more easily hittable target than a military base?
Well, I know Iran's missile program is mainly developed around their ballistic and hypersonic missiles that are meant to hit stationary targets on land. I think it's a lot harder to kind of figure out where a ship is and identify it. And on top of that, the aircraft carrier strike group contains a lot of support ships. It's not just the aircraft carrier. It's, I think, 3 to 6 destroyers, multiple frigates, and also attack submarines. And so you're going to have a lot of interceptors on those ships as well, to help defend the main aircraft carrier there. Also, it could be further away, right? Qatar is right next to Iran, Bahrain right next to Iran, Iraq right next to Iran, where the aircraft carrier could probably be, somewhere out near the Indian Ocean or something like that.
And how do you actually see a full-scale war with Iran playing out? Is he looking to just do targeted strikes and declare victory again, or do you think he's actually trying to topple the regime and hope that the masses protest after a strike, or are we talking a whole invasion? Like, what's your prediction here?
Invasion seems unlikely to me. I think there I guess two ways that it could play out. Donald Trump is going to try to take out the Iranian regime in one massive strike. My guess is that doesn't work. I don't know. They got Maduro, so I guess I shouldn't be too pessimistic about that. It's maybe very possible that they can. Israel obviously has very good intelligence inside of Iran. The U.S. has very capable, at times, military, people in our military. At times they're completely incompetent as well, but we do have some very capable forces, very advanced hardware. So maybe they go in, they're able to take out the Iranian government. My guess is then there is going to be some missiles fired at Israel from Iran, but it's also possible that Iran dissolves into more of a civil war in a failed state, which I think is ultimately what Israel wants in Iran. It's not necessarily that they want the MEK or the Shah or, a Kurdish independent state in Iran, or something like that. They just want Iran not to be able to challenge Israel on what they're doing in the Middle East. More likely the U.S. tries to take out the Iranian government and doesn't, and we end up in a scenario like we had in June, where Iran and Israel are mainly trading blows. I think Iran would probably try to attack more military bases, U.S. military bases in the Middle East on top of attacking Israel. Maybe they would see this as a good way to divert some of America's resources from defending Israel to try to defend our own troops, and space out the air defenses and radar systems and things like that. But the problem that you have here, Robbie, is that Iran is kind of in the fist fight with somebody at that point who also has a gun, right? Both Israel and the US have nuclear weapons. And so if Iran is too successful in the retaliatory attacks, then one of the two parties would probably resort to using nuclear weapons, and the Islamic Republic will be wiped out. So if the U.S. fails to topple the Iranian government immediately, I could see a very similar scenario playing out to what we saw in June, where the war goes on for a couple weeks. Iran starts to deliver some pretty significant blows to Israel as the Israelis run out of interceptors and the U.S. runs out of interceptors. And then, the two sides agree to a truce again.
All right. So in other words, it's like a bar fight. You're gonna let the people get a couple swings in, and when both had enough, I guess someone will break it up.
I sure hope it goes that way, because I do think U.S. strikes are coming. I don't think we're going to avert that.
All right, and then last one for you is Venezuela. Are we taking any more military action there, or we just wanted to snag Maduro and move on? Actually, I got one more after this, but we'll go with it. We'll go with this for now.
I really, it's so hard to say with Trump at this point. He seems so erratic, where at times he'll make these very big threats, attacking Iran, attacking Nigeria, attacking Venezuela, and actually follows through with them. At other times, we see the Trump of the Trump cycle that you point out, that I think is absolutely correct, where he makes these really big threats and then he does absolutely nothing and gets absolutely nothing out of it, like what we just saw with Greenland. I think it's very possible that Trump is now done with Venezuela. It's maybe possible that he kind of does a compromise where he just made sure no Venezuelan oil is going to Cuba, because I do really think that the regime change, or the kidnapping of Maduro at this point in Venezuela, was more about Cuba than Venezuela. Marco Rubio, our Secretary of State, really wants regime change in Havana. That is his ultimate goal. And whether this is true or not, I don't know. But Rubio does believe that the only thing keeping the communist government in power in Cuba was the resources that they were getting from Venezuela. And so if they cut that off, maybe the Trump administration is happy to kind of just settle for regime change in Havana and allows the government in Venezuela to continue on. If the government in Venezuela doesn't go along with Trump wants, I do think we see another round of strikes there.
All right. And so this is on the topic of Cuba. This was in today's Wall Street Journal. I highlighted this one line that I can't read from here, but it was essentially that they're looking for a similar situation to what they had in Venezuela, of a high-ranking government official who's willing to sell out the current government and basically align themselves with the U.S. So it sounds like they're trying to do that playbook again. I do kind of wonder, outside of just Rubio having a hard-on for Cuba, who gives a shit about Cuba? Like, what kind of a threat is Cuba to us that we even care or are concerned with them?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a big deal, especially for those of us up in New England. But in sunny South Florida, Robbie, there are a lot of my people from Latin America who have had,
this is their Israel.
Yeah, this is their Israel. Exactly. They care more about Cuba, Venezuela, Nicaragua, or any of these other Latin American countries that end up with left-wing governments, and then they advocate for regime change. And I think the major U.S. attention to Latin America under Trump is probably, at least in part, driven by the fact that there are so many people within his administration, not only Marco Rubio, I mean, even him himself now, he is living in Mar-a-Lago in South Florida. So that strain of Republican thought that dates back to the Cold War, avoiding regime change against communist governments in Latin America, is stronger in the White House now than has been in decades and decades and decades.
All right. Well, hey, man, it's a pleasure having you on, actually getting the scoop on all the stuff that's going on. For anyone that's interested, I'm going to do a watch along on my website, robbernsteincomedy.com. It's all $5 to subscribe. And we're going to do a watch along of Dan Bongino's first appearance on Fox News, and also the pitch for New Gaza. Kyle, if you got the time, you want to hang out for it, you're more than welcome. But we're literally just watching the tape, so I got respect for all the research that you do. But before I let you go, or you make that decision, why don't you let everyone know about your show and where they can find you?
Yeah, everybody check out my show, The Kyle Anzalone Show. If you do, go and watch the episode I did with Robbie here. One of my favorite episodes.
There you go.
My producer is still mad that you called him an old man, but after watching this today, you need yourself an old man producer, Robbie.
Yeah, I do.
So yeah, it's a pretty cool show. I do have a producer helping me out, so it's, I think, pretty smooth and clean. And I try to cover basically everything that Robbie asked me about on today's show on my show. And then I'm a writer at antiwar.com, the Libertarian Institute, and for Judge Napolitano at judgenap.com. Follow me on Ets at Kyle Anzalone _. And Robbie, I love hanging out with you, but I do think I'm gonna bounce. I'm pretty sure the baby's up from her nap, so go. My wife will be happy if I wrap this up now.
All right. Thank you so much for hopping on. You can I'll catch you hopefully soon in a live show or whatever. For everybody else, I'm going to take a 5-minute break, get myself a fresh zin in my mouth, take a leak, and then we'll be over at robbernsteincomedy.com for a watch along and for the Even More Reckless show. And on that note, if you guys have topics that you want me to cover over there, you can shoot me an email, robsnewsroom@gmail.com. That is our episode. Have a great weekend. Back next week, Wednesday, brand new intro. Got the whole thing written out. I'm excited for it. So I will see you there.